welcome. My name is Kelly.
My name is Kate.
And I'm Laura.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And today, that is Disney's classic, The Little Mermaid.
Yay!
Yay!
Guys, I am so excited to talk about The Little Mermaid. I loved rewatching this. It just brought back the waves of nostalgia, pun intended. And I am so thankful for the patrons over at patreon.com/Fanimated for voting on this topic. Because it's a classic and it's just, what I didn't realize until researching it is that it is the Little Mermaid is both like the grand finale of the traditional handmade cell animation at Disney, and also like this spectacular opening number to the Disney Renaissance and beyond. Like, it is the piece, the little puzzle piece that fits these two eras of animation, not even just Disney, just animation as a whole, fits it together and bridges this gap in technology and storytelling and everything else. And I'm so excited to dive into it. Guys, this is what Fanimated is about. So, Kate, Laura, thank you for joining me. We are the Disney crew here at Fanimated. And so it's always a joy to talk about these films with you. Speaking of the Disney Renaissance, we've talked about almost all the Disney Renaissance films. We've talked about Aladdin, Lion King. We'll have to get to Beauty and the Beast at some point, but this kind of adds to our list. So, of course, we always start these podcasts by saying how we first were introduced to the film and what our history is with it. So, Kate, take it away. What's your history with this film?
So this was one of the many Disney VHSs I had growing up. I think I actually remember, a babysitter maybe brought it over to our house when she was watching my brother and I when we were little. And I think that was probably how I was first introduced to the movie. But Ariel has been my favorite Disney princess as long as I can remember. And I just love this movie so much. And it just holds a very special place in my heart. And I watch it very frequently. And we just finished watching it maybe like a half hour ago, me and Laura, and I'm pretty sure I have this whole movie memorized. So that's kind of it's one of those movies that's just always been a part of my life. And I will always go back to it because it makes me feel nostalgic and happy. But I also just think it's a very, very good movie.
Oh, that's so lovely. Oh, I love that. If Ariel's your favorite Disney princess, were you the kid that was dressing up as Ariel for Halloween and stuff?
No, not really. Because one, her outfit was probably a little too provocative for my mom to to want me to wear. And two, I'm not redheaded, and for some reason, growing up, a lot of my favorite characters within the kind of pop culture sphere have always been redheads, which is kind of interesting to me. I've always particularly Ariel, Anne of Green Gables was another character that was really, my mom kind of compared me to that character a lot when I was little, because I was a very precocious, chatty kid. And I've always just loved Lucille Ball as just a human being and her comedy. And so I had a lot of really close friends that were redheads growing up. So there's just kind of always been a very strong, I don't know, for lack of a better word, interest or intrigue about redheaded characters or people. And and I was more of if I was going to dress up as a princess, it was always going to be Cinderella, because I was blonde hair with bangs. And,
yeah.
But Ariel's just always been my favorite. She's been the one that when I was younger in particular, I just felt really connected to her story of just wanting more than what was in front of me kind of thing. I grew up in a really small town and just knew that I didn't belong there and wanted to find better things for myself. So that was something that I always really related to Ariel on. And I love her. I love her, everything about her.
I love that. That's wonderful. Like truly her, desire for change, and she like moves forward on her own. It's so good. And even what you're saying about redheads, like, I was thinking like you kind of are a redhead at heart. I feel like
I think that is true. There's always been a little fiery spirit inside of me.
Exactly. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, well, like in animation, like, there are just these stereotypes with like character design. But it helps, us as audience members to know what that character is about, right? Like, if, like with redheads, like you think of all those characters, like you think of animated characters, like I'm thinking about all of these redheads, like in anime, even like Hinata and Reki, and all these redheaded characters are always the rambunctious, energetic, loud, just like very passionate people. And I would definitely say you and Ariel fit that to a T.
I dyed my hair red a couple years ago, like really red. And I've been looking back at photos of that time and like, I kind of miss it. I really liked having that hair color. So,
and shout out to all those true redheads out there and those redheads at heart.
Right.
All right. So Laura, what's your history with The Little Mermaid? And, what do you love about it?
Yeah. So unlike most of the other Disney Renaissance that we've talked about, I did not see this one in the theater because it came out the year I was born.
We'll forgive you.
Thank you. But this one, I just grew up, we always had the VHS. I don't know why my mom tells this story because we talk about how she doesn't like the I get my feminism from my mom a little bit, and that she doesn't understand the genderization of animated media, particularly as the Disney Renaissance went forward, because she likes to point out that my uncle purchased the Little Mermaid VHS for my little brother, or my older brother, for his second birthday. He got it from my Uncle Pat. So he got it before I was born. He got the VHS. And so we just always had it at our house. And being little, all of these movies were coming out, we didn't have the huge collection of Disney VHSs yet. So, there was a time when all we really had we had like The Jungle Book, we had Pinocchio, we had Little Mermaid, and we had Beauty and the Beast, and that was kind of it. And then we would get the other ones as they came out. But so this one was kind of in the regular rotation when I was a little girl. It was definitely the one that my parents didn't mind watching with us as much. I think they really loved the pacing and they really loved the music. Like I specifically remember when I was watching this, I was just watching this with Kate, which songs were my parents' favorite. We knew which ones were their favorite. My dad really liked The Little Mermaid. Watching it as an adult, not just this time, like the last few times I watched it, I think it's such a great piece because it moves at such a great pace and it's animated so well, that I can see why it was one of those first really, like, in a while for Disney, it was the first really great, like, true family film that, like, I think adults really, really enjoyed watching, not just because their kids wanted to watch it. So yeah, I can't say that Ariel was ever one of my favorite princesses. I really liked Ariel. I thought she was pretty. I liked The Little Mermaid. But it's never been like one of my favorites. I think of The Little Mermaid as sort of an ensemble piece. All of the characters have are for the amount of screen time they have, even people like Grimsby and Chef Louis are really well developed. I noticed that at the end of watching it, that like we check in with every single character at the end. Even Chef Louis has a little moment at the end to like tie up their storyline. And so when I think of the Little Mermaid, I don't necessarily think like, oh, I love Ariel, I want to be Ariel. I mean, I think we all felt her little part of that world moment when we were growing up, but it's such an ensemble piece, right? All the characters are well developed and used in really well, like great ways. There's no characters that are there for no reason. And I don't know, it's just unlike the other Renaissance films that we've talked about, where I have these really distinct memories of experiencing them for the first time. The Little Mermaid is special because it's always been there. We've had the VHS since before I was born, and I've been watching it. I don't remember the first time I've watched it. It's just been a part of the narrative of my childhood forever. So,
yeah, I love that, and I totally agree. Like, every single character is so important in this film, and yes, Ariel's the protagonist, but like I feel like Sebastian has an entire, hero's journey arc too. Like
every single character has so much to, I mean, even Chef Louis, even like Carlotta has a little moment at the end,
and they all have such personality,
such great personalities. And Flounder, Flotsam and Jetsam, I mean, as an adult, Ursula is my queen. My queen. I adore my sultry alto Ursula. Even as a little girl, like, Ursula scared me, but there were things about her that I loved. Now as an adult, I look back and I'm like, I remember that moment. I loved her as a little girl, which you are both giving me a face that you are 0% surprised.
No, not surprising coming from you at all.
But like, I'm like, oh, Ariel's okay. Who was great? Ursula was great. She's so evil. Oh, but just in like the sexiest way. Yeah, I love this movie because of the nostalgia, but also just because it's a great movie. It's just a really good movie. It's a really well-made movie. There's nothing in it that shouldn't be there. It's so, to use a word that Kelly uses a lot, it's a tight film. It is edited within an inch of its life. It is just like you can just imagine, like, you watch it and I'm like, this storyboard is like, I should be held up for, I can only imagine like the absolute definition of what a storyboard should be, because of the way that this is animated and then edited together. Like, it's just a masterpiece of editing. Yeah, it's a masterpiece.
When we were watching, I think I made that comment to you. I was like, man, the pacing of this movie is just so tight and spot on, and it just really clips along. Like, I don't think even when I was a little kid to now, I don't think there's ever a moment in the movie when I'm bored watching it.
Absolutely. And it really, truly is just so tightly written. Every moment has a place. And you mentioned too that, your uncle purchased it for your brother. Like, originally they were kind of afraid that this movie wasn't going to do well because it was quote unquote for girls. But I would argue, well, two things. One, that you can have a female protagonist and it doesn't mean it's for girls. Like, it's, you can have a female protagonist and it's for all children. And two, like, okay, what if you did have something that was super, super quote unquote girly? It would probably still do well, like whatever your assumption of that would be. And obviously, like, it kicked that in the butt because it, was such a successful film. So yeah, I think that's great. Your uncle recognized a good film for what it was, and
they didn't have to name it some stupid thing like Under the Sea to try to cover up the fact that it was about the Little Mermaid, unlike our favorite movie Tangled, aka Rapunzel.
Just name it something else so the boys will see it.
No, idiots.
Also, there are more male characters in the Little Mermaid than there are female characters.
Yeah,
so.
Literally two. Literally the good girl and the bad girl, which is also a feminine issue, may I say. There's two types of women. There's fat, ugly, evil ones, and there's thin, pretty, nice ones. The two types. That's all we need. No. The only types of women in the world.
There's no very in between.
Or pretty and nice.
Oh, that's so true. It's so true. And of course, like when the two female characters are together, they're just talking about Eric. So
Right. The Bechdel test is not necessarily passed in this movie.
nope. It's
Even
not.
with Ariel and Carlotta. Not that Ariel actually speaks to her, but it's all about Prince Eric.
Well, for the time, like Ariel was a very powerful, independent, like female character. And like she's the first Disney princess since Sleeping Beauty. So compare what's her name? Aurora with Ariel, right? Like clearly incredibly different. Sleeping Beauty doesn't do jack squat in that movie. She gets rescued by the very
She picks
dashing.
some berries. She's
Okay, she picks some berries.
She sings some pretty songs.
She does. She sings pretty.
She
songs.
has woodland friends.
Yes, but
She
Ariel
falls
is over
asleep.
here. She falls asleep. I mean, a true. I wish I could, just sleep all the time. No,
I mean, if that's not goals, I don't know what it is. What is?
truth, absolute truth, right there. But Ariel obviously like takes a lot more initiative, has a lot more like action, I guess, and comparatively is a very strong independent female character. And so just wanted to throw that out there as well. And we'll talk more about Ariel here in a bit. But yeah, I would say my experience with The Little Mermaid is very similar to you guys. Like it was a VHS staple at our house. But when I was rewatching it now, and it's been years, let me tell you, that since I've watched The Little Mermaid, and the opening starts, it's like seagulls, you see the dolphins swimming around, and I was just thinking, oh, the ship is gonna sail by, and Ariel with her baby are gonna be there, and I'm like, oh wait, wow, I think I've watched the sequel more than I've watched the original because I'm here like singing the opening number of that one in my head, and then I'm like, wait, no, this is not the sequel.
Kelly,
Yeah,
I've only seen the sequel once, and I feel like that is not okay.
wow. I mean, that was my childhood. Melody was my childhood. I was all about Melody and her friends.
you're showing your age. You are an infant baby child.
He's only
Okay.
a year younger than me. She's
You
not
are
that
both
young.
infant baby child.
I'm sorry. I just said that you weren't that young, Kelly, and I apologize. You're very.
Yeah, what are you saying, Kate?
Yeah, Kate, you have to remember I'm the older one here. So like if you're calling Kelly old and she's the youngest of us, I'll just retire to the nursing home with my puffy VHS tape of The Little Mermaid.
If you can find a VHS player, good luck.
I bet they have one at the nursing home.
I bet they do.
Complete side story, guys. Like, we have a VHS player still at my parents' house, and my brother and I the other day took it out to watch Harry Potter. Like, we have the original Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone on VHS, and we got out the VHS because we were like, we want to watch them all. Okay, and so we put it in, and like I'm teaching him how to rewind because LOL, that doesn't it's not a thing anymore. But like seriously, we start playing and we're like, this is the lowest quality like on our nice new, HD TV or whatever. It looked like absolute crap. We were like, oh no, this is bad.
On the note of Little Mermaid, I have to say, so we watched it via Disney Plus. We got to watch the restored 4K version on our TV.
Oh my gosh. I
And it
can't
was
imagine.
stunning. Like
It
to the
holds up.
point that we should probably put it on the list of things for you to watch when we're all together, just to watch that restored animation, like at that high level of quality on a screen. Like we've watched stuff that like, this shows that it's like rudimentary computer graphics or like I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when we watched Anastasia, it was a little rough on the fancy TV, right? But this was just watching the like enhanced 4K on the TV was just like it was a treat. It was so beautiful.
The
Oh my
animation is
gosh.
so gorgeous.
That's amazing. Yeah, I keep a list of things that I need to watch on Laura's 4K TV because it's so beautiful. Oh dear. So we'll add that to the list for sure. Basically, I like the sequel, and maybe we'll talk about that someday. But I also like Little Mermaid. So for those of you who don't know, I really hope you do. And if you don't, please go watch the film.
Why are you listening to this if you don't know? Like, I'm just going to peruse just podcasts and listen to these women talk about a movie I've never watched. Like, maybe you need some help.
Yeah, who are you? But we're glad you're here. But
oh, I'm sorry. We love you. Watch The Little Mermaid.
Watch The Little Mermaid. You'll like it. I hope.
You will love
Kelly,
it.
I'm ruining it.
You're not.
Kelly's, she's so welcoming and open, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
Well, I would question someone if they're looking for an animation fan podcast, but they don't watch animation.
And they've never seen The Little Mermaid. Like, I feel like that's like animation 101. Have you seen
much.
The Little Mermaid?
Yeah, it's true. It is true. And so if you are that person who hasn't seen it, though, spoiler warning, I guess, for this. The Little Mermaid is an adaptation of the Hans Christian Andersen story. In Disney's Little Mermaid, Ariel is the youngest of King Triton's daughters, and she really loves all things human and everything above the sea. She's a bit of a fanatic, and I can relate to being that fanatic about certain things. Unfortunately, like, it is, forbidden to go to the surface and interact with things there. So what you end up getting is a Romeo and Juliet, like, Ariel sees this beautiful, handsome man, Eric, and is like, I am in love. And so she gets legs from the sea witch, but the caveat is that if she doesn't get the prince to kiss her in 3 days, then, she becomes Ursula's personal property, I guess. Regardless, she gets to be a human for 3 days, and she has to give her voice to Ursula. And then it's this, little adventure trying to get the prince to fall in love with her and also fight the sea witch. And, in the end, everyone lives happily ever after because it's a Disney princess movie. And that's the basic synopsis. What did I miss?
You missed that she's also followed around by her gang of misfits.
Yes. Sebastian and Flounder. Sebastian the crab. Flounder the flounder.
and
Scuttle the seagull, who quite possibly is the most both annoying and charming animal in their friend group.
I love Scuttle. I think he's so funny.
Kate gets mad. Not really, but so there's a stage version of this show, and
yes.
Every time we watch it, I'm like, so I know you want to be the Little Mermaid, Kate, but you know what you'd be great at? Scuttle. Kate would be a stunning Scuttle.
We definitely had a discussion about how we would just like play all the parts.
Yeah.
In the Little Mermaid.
I would,
because all the characters are so fun. There's not a bad character in there. They're all really well developed and interesting and fun and funny, and
agreed.
Love them all.
They're all so fun, well-rounded. If we were, the characters of the Little Mermaid, if you're Scuttle, I would be Sebastian because I'm following the rules.
I see that for you.
And I try to keep you all in line, but of course, you would all do whatever you want anyway.
What I really want, because I have definitely passed my Ariel prime, I would love, this is a tangent, I would love to play Chef Louis but sing everything in like the operatic octave.
That would be amazing.
I think it would be really great.
I would love this. Please, please, please. So speaking of all of our favorite characters, let's just go through some of them, some of our favorites. Obviously, Ariel. Let's just start with the best. Ariel is 16, and this is another weird thing about watching when you're a kid and watching it now. Like as a kid, I was like, 16, that's so old. I'll probably have a Prince Charming by then. Hee hee. And now I'm like, she's 16. She doesn't know anything.
She's a baby child.
She's a baby child. But, you know, the heart wants what the heart wants, I guess.
I guess. Okay, can I go on my soapbox about Ariel now?
Please.
Can I step onto my soapbox?
Ready for it.
Here we go. So I really I love Ariel because I think similarly to what you maybe said earlier, Kelly, compared to the princesses, the predecessors before her, she was very different in the fact that she was really headstrong and super spunky and really fiery because she is a redhead through and through. And she wants what she wants. And to that point, we had Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. And even when I was a little girl, we had Belle, who she's very smart and independent, but she's not particularly spunky. I think she's a little more intuitive than Ariel necessarily is, because Ariel, like we said, is 16 years old and a baby child. And Jasmine is pretty fiery, but kind of in a different way than Ariel is. So these were the Disney princesses that were the ones that at least I kind of grew up on. Those were kind of my main ladies there. And I see a lot of that she just possesses qualities that me as a young girl growing up in the 90s and mainly 2000s and so on, those were traits that I really related to because I was a really kind of rambunctious, spunky kid. And I see a lot of stuff online now that is looking at the Disney princesses of old and, criticizing the characters for, Cinderella's just waiting around to be saved. And what does Snow White do? She cleans for a bunch of men. And this is, and I'm someone that kind of looks at these and I'm like, well, those were kind of the women's roles of the times. And that was then, and this is now. And yes, we're looking through a modern lens. But that was, what kind of the expectations of the women in society were then. And, now we've got Moana and we've got Tiana and we've got all these like cool, headstrong, hardworking princess characters to look at through our modern lens and go, hey, like these ladies are really cool. And they're kind of, progressing some of those characters that little girls can look at and go, oh, that, I want to be her. I want to be like her. And the main thing that I see against Ariel is that she gives up her voice for a man. And I am here to tell you, I don't think that is true. Yes, Prince Eric is there. He is kind of the catalyst for the action. He's once Prince Eric is introduced, that's when and she saves him. That's when the action starts to flow through the movie. But are you not listen to the lyrics of Part of Your World? Part of Your World, the entire lyrics of the song, before she ever lays eyes on Prince Eric, it's her I Want song. It is a beautiful I Want song. I love that song so much. And she, regardless of whether she ever interacted with Prince Eric or not, she wants to be in the human world. She is this girl who feels out of place. She doesn't feel like she belongs in the world that she's living in. And I think that, I think everyone kind of can relate to that. And I think, people look at it and they go, oh, well, she just gave up everything for a guy. And it's like, that's not true though. She would have given everything up, even if there wasn't a guy. It just happens to be that that's the plot device that they use is, there's this guy and she's 16 years old. He's a cute guy. Like, of course she's gonna want to, she finds him interesting, and he's a human, and she finds that fascinating. And so that just kind of gets the ball rolling in that court. And then Ursula sees that because she's watching her all the time and goes, oh, I can use that to my advantage, and dangle the carrot in front of her face to get what I want, which is total power over the kingdom. So I think that is very unfair to judge Ariel on that basis. She wants what she wants. She gives it up because that's her dream, is to be a human, or to at least experience the human world for a little bit. So I rest my case. That is my argument in defense of Ariel. She is kind of a little flighty sometimes, but I think that it's unfair to say that she gives it all up for man. The end.
I don't think she's flighty at all. I think she's passionate about something, and it goes for it, and she doesn't waver.
I would say one of the things that I like about Ariel and the way that her character is written, and this has to do with, I think, just the tightness of the script as a whole, is that she's a very simple character, and that makes her relatable to a lot of different people. I think you can read into, like, she's a girl and it's a love story, and she gives it all up for a guy. But because it's such a fast-paced, simple movie, I think one of the reasons that she's such an enduring character, and this is such an enduring movie for people, is that the simplicity of her not feeling like she fits in and wanting to be where she thinks that she does is something that most people have felt that at some time in their life. Marginalized groups of people of color, LGBTQ, that song, just because it's on, in the movie, it's sung by a white Little Mermaid who happens to fall in love with a guy, and that's the story. Part of your world and wanting to be different and giving up parts of yourself to try to achieve that goal and to try to break away, giving up her voice. I mean, just right there, that's so symbolic, sacrificing your own voice for the sake of trying to get yourself out of a situation, and maybe lending your voice to the wrong place to try to get you out of a situation. It's the simplicity of her character, her wants, and what she does to try to find the place that she feels like she fits in. It's such a simple human story. And I think that that's why she's such a favorite for so many people, because they didn't try to make it about too much. They didn't try to really make a huge statement. It's a simple human statement.
And again, like I mentioned before, like, of the time, like, Ariel, really was like such a change in the Disney, films, but also just films as a whole. And Roger Ebert of Chicago Sun-Times had written a review of the film when it came out and said, quote, Ariel is a fully realized female character who thinks and acts independently, even rebelliously, instead of hanging around passively while the fates decide her destiny, unquote. Ariel's great. I mean, I definitely, rewatching it, realized I liked her a lot more than I thought I did, because it can be really easy to just look at all of the Disney princesses and just be like, oh, well, she's just whiny or materialistic, or, insert thing here. But yeah, just like you're saying, it's easy watching it to just be like, part of your world. Okay, that might not be what I want, but there's something I want that badly. And I think everyone has something they want that badly.
Mm-hmm. This might be a kind of a side tangent, but I was, as we were getting ready to watch the movie, and as I was thinking about The Little Mermaid this week before we even watched it, I started to think about part of your world. And I'm someone, I obviously talk about all the time. I'm a musical theater lover. I love storytelling through song. That is, something I am super passionate about. And I think, that's the kind of art that really moves me, is when music and storytelling are tied. And I was thinking about part of your world and how that song and most of the songs in the movie are just another way to move the story forward. You get all of Ariel's character right there in that song. She lays it right out for you. She tells you exactly what she wants. And one thing that I was kind of thinking about, I was like, I know that there are people out there in the world who listen to music and do not listen to the lyrics. And that kind of boggles my mind. I've asked people who are like, oh yeah, I heard the song and I didn't register the lyrics at all, but it was a cool beat and a nice melody and I really liked it. And I was like, are those the people who don't get Ariel? Are those the people who don't like musical theater because the storytelling is all through the song and they just don't get it because they're not listening to the lyrics? Because it's all right there for you. As you can tell, I feel very strongly about this movie.
Okay, but I relate to those people who don't listen to the lyrics, and that's because I listen to so much J-pop and I don't speak Japanese. I have no idea what they're saying, but I love it.
That's different though, Kelly. You don't understand what they're saying. So then
I do.
Your ears...
I do, because the music tells me what they're saying.
Okay, Kelly. I feel like that's different though, because then you're like, well, I don't understand the language that they're singing in, but then your ear listens to other things. But I'm like, well, I understand English words because I speak English. So why aren't you listening to the words?
And it's our musical theater background, right? That's telling us that the words are important because they are. And I definitely have a lot to say more about the music here, which we'll get into. But I mean, that's an important piece of this, is just the musical theater aspect. Going on with more characters, though, Laura, I'd really, really love to hear your thoughts on Ursula.
I love Ursula so much. Ursula is so evil. She's just so evil. How do you even begin to describe her? She's just fabulous. Her entire character design, her voice, her song, her eels, what she does, the fact that her only reason for being there is to be evil. That's what she is in the show. She's just the evil person who wants to take over the world. What do we do tomorrow? The same thing we do every day. Try to take over the world. That's her entire reason for existing, which I mean, that's a fairy tale, right? But her entire character design of the voluptuous, fat, old, I used to be beautiful and now this is me woman. She's designed after a very famous drag queen was the inspiration for her physical character design. But her voice, that smoker's voice, her glamour as she sits in her, she's just so glamorous, which is a weird thing to say about Ursula because she's so ugly, but she's so glamorous when she sits down at her little vanity and puts her mousse out of the shell and mousses her hair even though she's underwater, and takes her little clam and the clam and puts her clam lipstick on. I was telling Kate, when I was a little girl, my dad had marigold plants, and when the marigold flower shrivels up and gets really soft because the flower's done, I would pluck it off of the plant and squish them out like Ursula squished her lipstick, and I'd pretend I was Ursula with the little marigold flower. She's just, she's manipulative. Her voice, one of the best parts of her character design is that she's scary, but she's also really relatable. She reminds me of my grandma's neighbor, Belva, a little bit. Belva had her name was Belva. Belva had a really low voice and was really fat and was very there was another extended family member named Bonnie that Bonnie was really fat and did some stuff that people were oh, Bonnie, right? And they'd call her Big Bon, and Big Bon was kind of she was relatable. I think we all have that kind of old, big, you're kind of afraid of her woman that like either went to your church or like is at a family reunion or something. And so that's what makes her so great, is she's so evil, but she's not all, you're not really super afraid of her until the end, which is why Ariel's not super afraid of her, because she seems like the fat neighbor lady who like might give you a cookie. I don't know. And then her song, like Poor Unfortunate Souls, is just like the most diva song. And we'll talk more about it later. When she turns into Vanessa and comes like Vanessa's so beautiful, right? In her wedding dress. She's just manipulative. She's just like the ultimate villain. And as much as I was just ranting earlier about like, oh, there's two women in this, there's the fat evil one and the skinny nice one. That's not Ursula's fault. She's fabulous. She's just one of the most, oh my gosh. I mean, when you line up the Disney villains, first of all, a lot of times they're men.
True.
And she's just like, oh, she's just like a feminist. I don't know. She's great. I love her
She is so
much.
fabulous.
I can't even justify, like, how do you even explain why Ursula is so phenomenal? She's just perfect. She's perfect.
She is. She is the perfect piece to this film. And I can't imagine this film without her.
Yeah, I mean, it's again that tight script and that tight character design. Like she is just as much a part of the Little Mermaid as Ariel is. She is the juxtaposition to Ariel really, really well. Like she is, you wouldn't have the Little Mermaid without Ursula. If she had been designed differently, if she looked differently, if she sounded differently, the movie would not be the same. She is a huge part of the success of this film, is her design and her voice and everything about her.
I think with her design in particular, it was so clever of the animators to kind of go in the direction that they did with her, because, you know, everyone else that you see in the film is either a mermaid, under the sea with the sea people, creatures. They're either a mermaid or, you know, like a fish or a crab or something that, you know, is very colorful and kind of belongs in that world. And then you see the contrast of Ursula. She's like an octopus, right? And she's got the purple and the black and the dark colors, and like just even the physical juxtaposition against the like character juxtaposition is just so beautifully executed, and she stands out in the best way. And you're right, she's just super fabulous. She's so great. I think she's one of my favorite Disney villains, if not my favorite.
And just the way she's animated, she's so voluptuous. And that again goes like to her character design, because all of the other mermaids have the beautiful fish tails, and she's got the you know, the tentacles, and the way she wears it, like that strapless, you know, she looks like the aged, I used to be somebody, like the aged movie star, right? In her like evening gown that she puts on to descend the stairs. And when she like rolls out of her shell and her like voluptuous rolls are just like flubbing about, like she's just like the way she moves, it's just an absolute total package character design that is, I mean, she is the Little Mermaid. It's her and Ariel are equally important in this movie. Oh, she's just one of the best.
Truly one of the best. And all of this with her character design and her animation and the voice acting, obviously. And they originally were going to have her be this like very skinny, you know, type of character design villain. And it for a very long time, the character designs were all that way. So it's like, it wouldn't be the same without the Ursula as we know her.
That's what makes her so fabulously evil. If she had been that sort of old crone, the bitter old crone, I want to rule the sea, right? She's just another bitter old lady. Ursula's just like, I'm gonna rule the sea, and it's gonna be a party, and it's gonna be like, she's just, oh my god, like the change between those two to like, instead of making her a bitter old crone, to just make her this like aged diva was just, I mean, the best. Whoever finally made that happen at Disney, I mean, snaps for them, because
Yeah, well done, well done.
yeah.
And y'all can't see this, but Laura did a very voluptuous dance for us.
Always.
The character I really wanted to discuss this time around is King Triton. And here's why. When I was a kid, it was very much like King Triton is just as much the villain. And the scene where he destroys her little cove absolutely terrified me, because that is some real rage. He's got some anger management issues. But like this time watching it, I felt a lot of empathy towards King Triton. Like he truly is trying his best. He loves his daughter. And like that one moment of, anger isn't the real him. Like he does so much for her and just cares about her. And he feels bad about it immediately, like his actions. He immediately is feeling remorseful about it. And I'm just like, oh, King Triton, like, as an adult watching it, I'm just like, he really cares, and it's more than that. And Ariel sees him, and I saw him as a kid to be, the meanie, the bully, who's like, you weren't at the, concert, and you can't be doing this, you can't be doing that. But it's really like he just cares about her and doesn't want her, get in trouble that she ultimately finds.
I love the relationship between Triton and Ariel. Also, poor King Triton lost his wife. I don't know why. I don't think they ever say in the movie how the mother died, but he's trying to raise like 7 girls on his own. That's very difficult. And to your point, Callie, what you were kind of saying about the scene where he destroys the treasures in the cave. I've seen it before, but it's obviously I've seen that scene many times. But the little moment where the destruction is kind of the smoke is clearing and the destruction is now visible, and Ariel starts crying and is very upset. The little moment where he turns back and almost says something and goes, "No, just leave her be," just was like so heartbreaking to me when I was watching this time around. It's like, oh, he knows that he reacted rashly in a moment of just anger and frustration, but he loves her so much, and he knows, and he just wants to protect her. And I just love the moment at the end at the wedding. I love him. Okay, that's it.
He is definitely a man of action, and he doesn't feel like his words are communicating with Ariel. And so he acts out and is like, maybe this will get through to you. Like, and clearly that was not the way Ariel communicates, and pushed her, away and into this deal with Ursula. But, from that second on, like he really is just like trying to reconcile that.
I would say, and this again, I am a broken record, it's just such masterful use of his screen time to get who his character is across. He's not on screen very often, but I think that it's very clear that a lot of the people who were writing this movie were parents, and that he is a parent who is trying to, your children start growing up and they start becoming actual people. And sometimes you just don't understand why people do things, right? When your children are little, you're in control of them. And as they start to become adults, you literally just can't understand why they make some of the decisions that they do. And in that period where your kids are a teenager, right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely had a lot of rows with my parents as a teenager. I was very Ariel-esque. I was an extremely, surprise, guys, I was an extremely headstrong child with a lot of opinions about what was right for myself that my parents didn't necessarily agree with, or were worried that were going to turn into things that were going to hurt me and then hurt them, because I was their child and they wanted to protect me. And I think that even though it comes off as like, well, you know, as a child, I just thought that was so scary and so evil. Again, kind of coming on the out watching it as an adult at her wedding when she says, I love you, daddy, right? Like I'm getting like teary, right? It's this whole arc of like looking at, it's just a parent who's trying to do the right thing for their child. And you get to a point where like your kids just aren't going to listen to you anymore. And he's at that point. And I think that they're able to portray such a relatable parent experience in such a very short amount of screen time for King Triton. He has no song. Everyone else has a song, right? He doesn't have a song. He's got a few little quips here and there, but like they do such a good job of establishing that parent relationship. And he's just a very, I think, a well-developed character. Also, his entrance at the beginning is just like badass. I told Kate, I was like, well, I want to like enter with dolphins and like light the chandelier and have everyone clap for me at all times. Like that sounds like something I want to do.
I could totally see you as the ruler of the sea, though. So yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Kelly.
King Triton is great. I definitely am more on his side now. But of course, we have so many other characters. So really quick, you know, Sebastian, obviously, we love our little crab friend. And I mean, he also kind of goes on this crazy journey and is a huge part of the show. And, you know, I know you guys really like him too. So what do you like about Sebastian?
I feel like to tell the truth, I feel like watching it now, I'm like, Sebastian is the character that I relate to most. Just like the times in my life that I'm just all like so anxious all the time and trying to control everything around me, and everything is not in my control, and just trying to grasp at straws as to what can I control and what can I make go right. Sometimes I just really feel like Sebastian. So, and again, well-developed character. We know who he is very quickly, and his arc and the journey that he goes on with Ariel. You know, I think he slowly but surely kind of comes onto her side, and you know, is a very supportive friend. I love the scene where he's trying to teach her how to kiss. It's just, that's always been one of my favorite little bits, and I think it shows the tight development of that relationship, and I don't know, it's just so good.
Yeah, he is immediately like Ariel is just like an adoptive daughter to him too, because like he's just like, we're on a mission, we're gonna make it happen, but he's also like, I really care for you and I want what's gonna make you happy. And I love that, and it's great. And he, you know, he starts out being much more like Triton, like you can't be on the surface, blah blah blah, but you know, definitely changes and wants what's best for her and what she was ultimately going to make her happy.
I also really relate to Sebastian in a way different from Kate. Also, I have to say, when I was little, my brother could not say Sebastian and he called him Sebastian, so we called him Sebastian for a very long time. I relate to Sebastian in that Sebastian is just trying to get things done. He's like, here's the directive, let's do it. And the whole story is just full of people who are just like, why can't we just follow directions? But Sebastian is also like good at everything. He knows how to do everything. And he's like, okay, I guess we're pivoting to this new goal. Here's how we're going to achieve it. You're not going to go to the surface. Oh, you are going to go to the surface? Okay. Well, first, let me sing you a song about why you're not going to do that. And it's going to be great. Now you went, well, you know, the cat's out of the bag. I guess we're up here. I'm going to teach you how to kiss. I'm going to sing a whole song about it. I'm going to go get your dad. I guess I'll just fix everything. I really just wanted you all to come to my concert. I'm not sure how this got so out of hand. But like, he doesn't panic. He just like gets in there and is like, I guess I'll fix everything. And I have such like mom vibes and always want to fix everything and give people advice and like, oh, fine, Ariel, you pucker up your lips like this. You bat your eyes like this. When he's teaching her, he just gets stuff done. And it's like, instead of panicking and like, this is a disaster, like Scuttle, can't even get the words out. Sebastian's just like, this is the situation we're in now. Do I want to be here? No. But will I fix it? Yes. And I can relate to that a little bit. I don't know, Kate, if you would agree, but that's definitely me a little bit.
That is for sure you. We're like the two different sides of the coin of Sebastian. You're the Sebastian who gets things done, and I'm the worrywart Sebastian who's just afraid of letting everybody down.
Oh, you guys, we're all just a bunch of Sebastians over here. Obviously, lots of other characters, lots of other great characters. And like we said, all of the characters are important to the story. They all have, very distinctive personalities, and quite a lot of them have their own, changes and journeys that they go through, which could be like hyperanalyzed. But for the sake of time, we need to talk about the music of this phenomenal film. And there is so much to say about this. I just want to talk about Alan Menken and Howard Ashman forever. But to start off, what is your favorite song from The Little Mermaid?
How do you pick a favorite
I know
song?
you can't,
because
they're all so good.
This is a movie, because we just watched it, where every time a new song starts, you're like, this one's my favorite. And then the next one, you're like, no, it's this one. I forgot about this one. Like, every single one is so good, especially because a lot of them are tied to the characters. And so it's like, how can you even have I just feel like that's an unfair question.
Okay, then. Well,
I mean, if I had to answer,
you are, being threatened with, Ursula stealing your voice, unless you tell her one favorite song of the film. What's this? That's your favorite?
I'm going to tell her what she wants to hear, which is Poor Unfortunate Souls.
Surprising no one.
Surprising zero. If I had to pick one, that it is just the like boom, 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 just like the bass line of it, the way that it's sung, the way that it tells like so much exposition happens. Like, we learn who Ursula is in that song. We learn her whole story, what she is, what she's doing, what she can do for Ariel. It's also just a belty, brassy alto number. It's one of the best, I would say, like one of the top 3 Disney villain songs in the entire, like, it is right up there with Be Prepared for me. Like, it's just one of the best villain songs. I think it's orchestrated really well. And I also just like, I love to sing that one. I love to sing all of the songs, but I just like, if I had to pick one that I could listen to again, and it's hard because can I tell you my second one too? I love that one. Coming in at number 2 is Kiss the Girl, because that's just like one of the best. That was also my dad's favorite song from the movie when I was little. He loved that song and would sing it around our house. So I have great memories of that song.
Excellent choices, truly. And it's true. It is very hard to choose just one favorite because all of them are gold. All of them. There's no skippable songs on the soundtrack. But Kate, what would it be for you?
Oh man, it's like choosing a favorite child. I don't have children, but I imagine that this is what it's like. To be honest, I think Under the Sea is my favorite. It's just like the show stopping number. It makes you feel so happy. You get those first little and you just know you're in for like a good party time. The puns are so clever. The lyrics are so tight.
No one loves a pun more than Kate.
No one loves a pun more than me. It's such a fun song. And I love that. I mean, obviously it gives you a little more context to Sebastian, but it just expands the world a little bit more. You know, so far in that movie, you've just seen the kind of kingdom of Atlantica. You've seen, you know, the throne room. You've seen a little bit of the human surface up above. You've seen her cave. But it really expands and brings the sea creatures in, and it's just such a colorful just party. It's a party. It's so fun. And that one just I think when I think about The Little Mermaid, that's always the first song that comes to mind. Part of Your World is also a like sentimental favorite of mine. I have memories from when I was really, really tiny, maybe just 3 or 4. The first house that I lived in growing up, I have very early memories of me by myself in the backyard in the morning on our swing set singing Part of Your World to myself. Like, I think I even said when we were watching the movie this afternoon, like, this is one of the movies that taught me how to sing. You know, like, this is just one of the kind of the Disney movies in general, but it was just like those songs are just so ingrained in me. And I'll share one more story. It's not really a song, but it's the little bit in Poor Unfortunate Souls where Ursula's taking her voice and she does the ah. When I was little, my mom, when she was like kind of teaching me how you should properly brush your teeth, she would tell me like, okay, stick out your tongue so that we can brush your tongue and get all the gunk off of that. And I would just go ah, like sing it as I was brushing my teeth. So there's just so many good songs in this movie, but ultimately I would say Under the Sea is my fave.
I have to agree with you. Under the Sea is the one that I am always, always, always ready to jam out to. I had the lyrics memorized when I was a child. All those fish playing all those instruments. I can't tell you now, but I'll tell you that was me on the playground jamming out to that. But truly, it's just like the heart of the film really is Under the Sea. Also, the message is great, as Sebastian says. The human world, it's a mess.
I have to say, when I was a little girl, Under the Sea was my favorite. Like, as a child, that's what I would have told you my favorite song was. Mostly because I loved when the blowfish blow. That was my favorite part. Come on, you blowfish, blow! And he gets all big.
I love that so much. Obviously, all of the music is fantastic. Part of Your World, again, like, that's just staple of the film. And it was almost cut from the film, and they fought for it because clearly it's a slower song, so children are going to get antsy in that scene. But
can you imagine if that song was cut?
No, I can't.
Then
I don't
my
know.
argument would lose its foundation as to why Ariel is such a good character.
Yeah, it's like
that gives you everything about her.
It's like, why would we even care about her if that song wasn't there? It's like, here's a sad little redheaded fish girl who loves the prince. Like, what's the point of this movie if she doesn't sing that song?
Right. So as I was kind of looking up some facts, and maybe you saw this too, Kelly, but Glenn Keane was the lead animator for Ariel.
Correct.
And the moment at the end of Part of Your World where she sings her big note and reaches up and then kind of falls back down, he was kind of embarrassed that made it into the movie. They just like ran out of time when they were animating it. And he was always really embarrassed about that shot because he just thought, oh, it's cheesy and it's not as good as it could be. And he changed his mind because like several years down the road, a young woman approached him and said, I just want to let you know that moment meant so much to me because as I'm watching, I wanted to reach back and I wanted to take Ariel's hand and I wanted to help her. And he changed his tune on that very fast after that interaction because he, it made such an impact on the viewer, which I thought was really sweet.
Oh, I love that so much. Like, it's truly fascinating how like either animation mistakes or animation cuts, like just things that happen from production of a show can create such an impact. Like it's in those things that like it feels even more magical that way because you know, and I think it's true for any medium, any story, like there could be something in there that you like as a creator didn't anticipate resonating with a person, or it didn't anticipate connecting in a certain way. And that's like, I mean, that's the magic of we're going like really broad here, but that's like the magic of art in some ways, because it's a any medium, whatever it is, it's a two-way street. There's a performer or there's an artist and there's an audience, and it's that connection. Art is just communication. It's just communication between those two, and it's those types of things that like absolutely fascinate me and like make me so passionate about this. And for me, that's animation specifically, but like it could be anything, and where we're at and how we experience something just can trigger, you know, a really strong personal connection. And that's such a good story to hear. And I love that so much. One of the other ways that The Little Mermaid is so important to especially Disney animation history, but just animation history in general, is that with its music, it brought the Broadway formula into animation. And granted, of course, there are musicals before this, and you know, Disney specific ones, and Disney originally had a ton of music, but that was kind of like music in film in general, not just animation, was kind of losing popularity. There just wasn't as much music in film and in Hollywood, and you know, Alan Menken and Howard Ashman really brought that Broadway structure into animation, and they truly like started something for Disney, because I like think about all of these films that came after it, and it's like that's what Disney's known for, is the music in their films, and it's so unique and so different. And like we're talking about Part of Your World, right? That's an I Want song. That's a musical, you know, theater term. Like you have all of these songs, and they truly are the foundations of this film specifically, right? Like you have to have these songs to make it work. And I finally watched the Howard Ashman documentary, and that's on Disney Plus, and he was talking about how he always thought film musicals were strange, because it's like, why are they singing? It just feels a little off. It's not the same as seeing something live, a stage adaptation where, you know, they're singing and they're filling this great space. It's like, I mean, film can feel so intimate in a way. At least that's how I'm interpreting his thoughts. But like, he really felt very comfortable in this pocket that animation allowed to bring life and voice and music, in the theatrical music, into animation specifically. Like animation is where it was easy to do that, because before that, doing Little Shop of Horrors, and that was a film musical, but it was all parody all the time, so like it worked because it wasn't supposed to be serious. So I just find all of that really fascinating, and just the whole idea of musicals in Hollywood in general. And especially like now, I feel like we're in a resurgence of that, you know, with In the Heights and Dear Evan Hansen coming out. And but in the same way, I'm making this observation that like Raya the Last Dragon, the latest Disney princess, wasn't even a musical at all. So yeah, we're just in this strange time for sure.
Another interesting thing, just because I'm a nerd, and from a musical theater history standpoint, the 80s into the 90s was a very weird time for musical theater, particularly in New York. It was really losing its footing on what the traditional format was. And with the resurgence of Rent, it kind of created a new genre of musical theater, a new aspect of what musical theater could be. And I think it's really funny that I think there was a comment in that Howard documentary where he said musical theater is now animation. Like animation is where good musical theater can be and is at right now, because stage musicals were really kind of floundering at that time. And I think Howard Ashman and Ellen Menken really found this like wonderful way to kind of preserve some aspects of that, the formulaic way that musicals always had been, and found a new avenue to kind of revert that to, if that makes sense. I just think that's within the history of musical theater is very fascinating, and obviously they brought us some incredible work.
All right, let's talk about production and animation. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, The Little Mermaid really is the bridge that gaps the Disney Dark Ages and the Renaissance. And not only clears this gap between these two eras of Disney history, but also is a huge stepping stone for Western animation and animation in general. It truly is the movement from one, type of animation to another. And there are lots of ways in which it does that. So let's just talk about the animation specifically. The Little Mermaid was the last canon Disney feature to use traditional hand-painted cell animation. And what is that? You might hear that a lot if you're an animation fan, right? And if you don't know, hand-painted cell animation is basically they have an actual image that they, on this cell that they're hand painting with actual paint and paintbrush and inking it. And then they, scan that image and put all of those images together, and then you get the movie. These types of cell painted films use hundreds of thousands of these cells. It's the same process that's been used since the beginning of Disney animation. And for years leading up to The Little Mermaid, Disney had actually been working on CAPS technology. What does CAPS stand for? Computer Animation Production System, which is a digital way to color their illustrations, their animation. Basically, that using CAPS, you can scan that, image into the computer, and then, it seems pretty simple, right? At least to me as a digital illustrator, you can just use the paint bucket tool in whatever, program you're using and drop it into a, closed circuit, closed form, and that entire form will be that color, right? Obviously especially at the beginning, there was a lot of tips and tricks, and it took a long time to still do that digitally, but it's definitely way cheaper and way less time than hand painting with a paintbrush. And again, Little Mermaid, last feature to use that hand-painted cell animation. After that, they did Rescuers Down Under, which was all digitally colored, which is very cool. But because that technology was still being in development, they were able to use it for some scenes, including the ending scene with the ship going underneath the rainbow and all the mermaids saying goodbye to Ariel. And that was a combination of approximately 6,000 different images with, all of the waving mermaids and the rainbow and everything else. So even with their computer animation production system, it still took a lot of time and effort. And of course, things have only increased technology-wise from there. It was also the only feature-length animated film to utilize every form of animation technology introduced from the earliest days of handcrafted animation to the advent of the CAPS. So, they're using all sorts of tips and tricks and technologies to create The Little Mermaid. Obviously, they use computer-generated images for things like the ships that are sailing. There's that one scene when Ariel runs down the stairs in the castle to see Vanessa there. That's 3D. When Ursula turns into her giant form, I noticed it. There's one shot of the camera moving up with Ursula, but you see Sebastian floundered, like looking up at her. Like that's a quick shot with computer CGI. Again, Disney continued to utilize CGI and did before that, but so it's just using all of these different technologies. One of my favorite little tidbits, what I found very interesting, was there are certain parts, especially like even in the beginning sequence, you can kind of tell they're underwater because it feels a little fuzzy, a little blurry, and that's just like separate green and white Xeroxed overlays, and they're just like set askew from each other to create like that effect. And that was just like an accidental, another, like we were talking about, a little accident that turned into like a real thing. So they're just layering these colors, these cells, which I thought was cool because when I was watching, I was like, man, how did they do that? It looks watery. And we already talked about Glenn Keane, supervising animator for Ariel. I'm just going to note his name again because he is a staple, like a pinnacle animator, especially for Disney. You can just tell if something is Glenn Keane, and it's amazing. Andreas Deja is also a favorite of mine personally, and he was supervising on King Triton, so I just wanted to throw that out there. This was one of the most expensive films Disney had produced in decades, but it clearly returned on that investment, we'll say. They also, animation-wise, used live action models to base their animation off of, which they hadn't done in a very long time as well. They even, filmed people underwater to then use when animating, which they might not do that like officially anymore, but I see it all the time. Like that's still how animators figure out how to animate something. Like, I just follow a lot of animators on Instagram, and they'll be like, here was my friend or me or the guy in the cubicle next door did this little action for me so that I could figure out what that looked like.
They have footage of that in the Frozen 2 documentary.
Mm-hmm.
One of the animators on Olaf, they have a big
Yes.
room full of mirrors, and they show him going into it's a rehearsal space. They show him going into the rehearsal space and acting out one of the motions that he wants Olaf to do, and then videotaping himself doing it.
And
Exactly.
the bit where they were talking with the woman who animated the Into the Unknown sequence, where she runs and kind of slides at the top of the ledge, and how she like had her partner or boyfriend or whatever film her like running and leaping so that she had a reference to make it look more realistic.
Absolutely. Exactly. So that's still a technique used today because that's how you figure it. You draw from life. You got to figure out what it looks like before you can replicate it. The underwater setting of Little Mermaid also just brought about some challenges, but also just like some pretty fascinating figures. It required the most special effects for Disney since Fantasia. And they had over 1 million bubbles hand drawn for the film. That, of course, was outsourced. That was some outsourced labor because Disney couldn't do all of that in the time allotted. Speaking of, not only was this just profitable for Disney, I mean, it was the biggest financial success in a decade. And I believe the highest grossing animated film in its initial run, like of the time. It just proved that Disney animated features were profitable, and like animation in general, there was like less interest at the time. Disney was doing a lot more live action stuff. They had their Disney World and all of these things that were garnering profits. And the Disney Animation Studios was just like so small. The Walt Disney Feature Animation staff was 300 people in 1988. But The Little Mermaid and the success of the Disney Renaissance brought that number to 2,200 staff members in 1999 with 3 different studios. The Little Mermaid was definitely the start of Disney actually taking, going back to its roots, taking a bigger interest in the animation, segment of their company. So basically, like after researching this film, I just realized how truly indebted we all are to The Little Mermaid, because it didn't just save Disney animation. Like, I think it saved animation.
Yeah.
Like the animation industry as a whole. It proved that people wanted to see this and that there's a profit for it. There's an audience for it. And, now, it's grown so much and there's so much more interest in animation nowadays. But like before, 70s, 80s for sure, it was just, there was not as much interest.
I will definitely say, from the perspective of not an animator, but someone who really loves movies. And I was trying to think about this, over our conversation and after having just watched it. Little Mermaid, I feel like, was one of the first, and this is one of the first in a while of the animated movies that Disney produced that I felt like you could tell that the team that did the more traditional movie making stuff, like editing, we're going to edit this together now. And like we just talked about with the music, the composers, this was the first Disney movie in a long time that got back to, what I think Disney's vision was, which is this is treated like it's a movie. Just because what you're working on is animated, it's still a film and it should be treated like a film. And this is like storyboarded and edited so beautifully. And I think like Under the Sea is such a perfect example of those, like the flashes of all of the different scenes that they had animated and the way that they like that didn't have to be edited that way. They could have edited it very differently with different scenes, longer scenes. It's edited like a traditional movie in a way that like lots of other, I think of like The Rescuers, stuff that came kind of right before that, movies that I really like, but they're edited like a children's movie. They're not edited the same way of like an action movie or an adult movie from the time. So I think that that's really, it's not animation, but it's that filmmaking process of that. This was the first one in a while that I felt like was taken seriously as a film and not just as here's another animated movie.
Yeah, I would agree. Even the difference between this and Oliver and Company, which was the one preceding it, is huge. Like completely different tone style. Like, and what's the word I'm looking for? Intent. It feels different. It feels like the people working on it. I mean, granted, I'm sure a lot of them were, similar, but like, there was just such a different drive coming from it.
Yeah, it's and I think it's one of the reasons that they did so well for such mass audiences. When you look at things, I was noticing how much they paid attention to the 180 angle, which is, what is your character looking at, getting the reactions of the other characters. Unlike a stage play or unlike, where everything's sort of happening at once and you follow a linear path. One of the things that I really loved was like how they would cut to the 180 angle of another character to help the audience figure out what their reaction should be. They use that a lot with with Scuttle and Sebastian. When Sebastian comes into Ariel's cave for the first time and sees where, right before she sings her stuff, they use that angle of him to show the audience how they should feel, right? And cutting back, and that's something that you didn't see as often. That's a more traditional live action editing tool, and that's not even editing because that wasn't footage that they filmed. That all had to be animated before it even remotely got to, the editing phase. So that storyboarding and understanding that traditional filmmaking piece, it was like, like you said, Disney had gone away. They had gone to this live action space, but now they suddenly had, people who were taking what they knew about making good live action films and using that to make really good animated films. And it wasn't two separate worlds anymore. And that's what made the Renaissance, I think, so like those movies were so special, because they started getting treated like just movies again and not animated kids movies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agreed. So yeah, any final thoughts on The Little Mermaid?
It's a very good movie.
It's a classic. I feel like this is the first classic I've talked about with you guys. Like classic. Let's say classic about it.
Yeah. I mean, classic. I guess maybe I would put this like on the one of the highest pedestals of classic animation that we've discussed on the podcast. Disney
exists today because of The Little Mermaid. The Little Mermaid saved Disney Animation Studios, and they wouldn't be what they are today. Everything we love about Disney owns our souls because of The Little Mermaid.
I mean, can you imagine if Little Mermaid had failed, or if they had not made Little Mermaid? Like, Disney probably would just be like, Disney World would just be like a kitschy theme park. Not like the, like, oh my God, it's Disney World that we have today. I mean, the whole world is Disney World, let's be real.
I literally can't even imagine a world without The Little Mermaid.
Right.
Oh man. But truly saved animation in the West for sure. So thank you again to the Fanimated crew over at patreon.com/Fanimated for voting on this topic. There were a lot of great Disney princesses in the poll, but we will get to the rest at some point. But this was so fun to talk about. So thank you to all of our lovely, beautiful, fantastic donors. You are all great. And my appreciation is as vast as the ocean.
Nice.
Continuing with the theme. You can reach us at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. I do read every one of those emails, and I do most of the time respond, and I do really, really, really appreciate it because I love to geek out with everyone. So feel free to reach out there. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast, so you can stay up to date with all the latest and greatest animation news and podcast updates and everything else that's going on in the world of Fanimated. We're on YouTube. I'm currently reviewing Fruits Basket season 3, but doing lots of other random things over there. And you can review this wonderful, great podcast that you're listening to, not to like toot our own horn, but like if you've made it all the way to the end of this episode, then that means you like our show. So tell us about it. So give us a review. Let us know what we should be watching there. And the music is provided by Purple Planet Music. The art's done by myself. You can follow me on Instagram at CandorDraw. And thank you, Kate and Laura, for joining me. This was super fun. Thank you guys so much for listening. Next week, we should be talking about the Infinity Train. So join us then. In the meantime,
stay tuned
and stay animated. Also, if you don't know the story of The Little Mermaid, like, have you been living under a rock?
Probably
under
the sea.
Like hundreds of years.
Kelly! Talk about sea puns. Have you been living under the sea?
Become a part of our world. And
oh my God!
Oh no. Okay. We're done interrupting, Kelly. And by we, I mean me. Go ahead and tell us what The Little Mermaid's about.